The Toxic Wood by Lazy Litch is a corrosive hexcrawl adventure for old-school essentials or similar retro D&D clones. I think Merkborg players are going to like it because of how dark, dire, and deadly it is. It's like a fantasy version of Stalker, where you explore a magically corrupted woodland instead of the radioactive Chernobyl exclusion zone. The PCs are hired by a bunch of nefarious wizards to save the people of a town trapped within the woods. For that end, they're given a magical orb that creates a 10-foot magical bubble of clean air. All it needs to do that is magical fuel like spells, magical items, or life force. So now the PCs not only need to worry about running out of food and water, but also the very air they breathe. All while they explore the hostile toxic environment full of mutated plants, animals, and cultists trying to eat them, or worse. But while the adventure is dark, dire, and deadly, there's also plenty of dark humor to be found. Like and subscribe, and let's get into the full review. I already like the very basic concept of this adventure, this exploration of a very deadly environment. It's a bit like a survival horror game in the veins of Metro 2033 or the before mentioned Stalker or maybe the movie Annihilation. Imagine traveling through this toxic, hostile woods where the very air will kill you if you go outside of your magical protective bubble. To further complicate this problem, you can give your characters one of these 10 backgrounds that will give them individual goals that do not align with each other. And then the characters somehow have to navigate these goals that will lead them in different directions, all the while being stuck in their magical bubble. Apart from the magic orb that is creating the clean air zone that is fueled by magic like magic scrolls, spells, life force and so on, most of which can be found in the woodlands themselves, but which will add a further survival element the players have to look out for. But they also have their emergency bubbles, which are amulet that each player gets that create a small personal bubble that will only last for 3d10 plus 5 hours, but it's not as good, and they will still take a bit of damage for every 5 hours, and they will suffer from the toxicity sickness. Also note, this is the only place in the adventure where the effects of the toxin is shown. So I assume if you go into the toxic air without these protective bubbles, these effects, weakness, nausea, migraine, plants sprouting from skill, and random mutation, will happen a lot sooner. Maybe 1 HP of damage every round and 1 level of toxicity every round outside of the bubble. Depending on how deadly you want this to be, that can be 1 combat round or 1 round of exploration or 15 minutes. But it's not stated anywhere in the adventure. For my background world, I would replace these emergency bubbles with like pest doctor style gas masks that basically have the same function, but it's a slightly different style. It's more chemical instead of magical. For this, you have of course a chart with 12 random mutations, which are horrible, but can even be helpful and can be a bit of slapstick humor. Like growing an extra arm. You get an extra attack. However, mutated druids can control these arms, causing the players to fight themselves. Yeah, that's Army of Darkness style humor right here. There's a 2-page spread hex map of the wood. You can explore 1 hex at a time with important locations just highlighted by how they look, which at booklet size can be a bit small and hard to read, I think. I wouldn't have minded if these were also numbered or lettered. And I think when I'm going to run this, I will print these out on A4 sheets of paper and tape it together to form a big A3 map. There's a loose timetable of events that will happen if the players do not interfere, but really it's up to your players how this will turn out. Will they kill the dragon? Will they save the villagers? Or will they join the cult? It's all up to them. There are several factions within the Toxic Woods, each with their own agenda. There's the Dragon Iron, who just wants to be left alone actually. It's a bit of a coward. There are Iron's cultists, who serve and venerate the dragon. Then there are the sisters, who are cursed and trapped in the wood and search for a way out. There is the demon core, which is actually the cause of the toxicity, of the corruption of the woodland, and it wants to spread its influence. There's a small community of surviving redcaps who want to get out. I think these are like gnomes, forest gnomes. Then there's the mushroom witch, which can help the players who wants to deactivate the demon core and thus turn the wood back to normal. But at the beginning of the adventure, she is already captured by the first of the two sisters. Furthermore, the players can find a field of graves where they can recruit a small army of foolhardy skeletons to fight by their side. Even within the village where there are actually surviving humans, there are several factions which are formed under the stress of the extreme conditions. We've got a number of cursed, mutated and toxic plants with various effects that the players can encounter, find and gather. A number of mysterious and interesting bonus locations that are not necessarily involved with the main plot, but which can give the characters good loot and information, or mutations and a swift death. Everything's possible here. We also get 9 horrible monstrosities for random encounters within the wood, and a random treasure table. The PDF ends with a blank hex map, a 1-page version of the hex map from the beginning, and a 1-page version of the hex map with all of the plot locations removed. Personally, I'm a huge fan of black and white art, and this parallel line hatching shading techniques gives the adventure a very distinct, if abstract, look. It might not be to everyone's taste, but I personally like it. It sets the mood and atmosphere of the adventure perfectly. All in all, I quite like this adventure. There's a good amount of dark, dire and deadly content in here, with monsters and plant and number of hexes and key locations to explore. There are some twists and turns, plenty of room for conflict with all the different factions. The adventure is presented in the way how I personally prepare my adventures, with NPCs and locations, some information and nothing more. No exhaustive descriptions of everything, no long read aloud texts, no pre-written plot of things that have to happen. This is a free-form adventure. You play to find out what is going to happen in true old-school spirit. I only have minor complaints with this adventure. I think the map could be more easy to read, and I would like to know how the toxicity is supposed to work if exposed directly to it, but other than that, it's a fine adventure. Print versions from the Kickstarter of this are currently being shipped. The PDF that I'm showing here is available from Drive-Thru RPG. link in the description below. The adventure is also short enough and the format is small enough that you can easily print it out yourself and staple it together. Video on how to do this coming up next week. That's it for today. Thanks for watching and until next time.